Morning. Welcome to the Stimson Center's webinar in collaboration with the Embassy of Japan commemorating 10 years, 10 years of Operation Tomodachi. We're letting people into the this webinar room. So if you can give us a couple of more minutes and then we're going to get started. Okay, I think people may still trickling in as we move to the seminar, but we only have an hour, so we're going to get started. Again, welcome everyone. For those of you who are channeling in from the US, good morning. For those of you who are joining us from Asia, good evening. My name is Yuki Tatsumi. I'm a director of Japan program and a co-director of East Asia program at Stimson Center. And we have been having the honor of collaborating with the Embassy of Japan to run the seminar series commemorating 10th anniversary of Operation Tomodachi. And this is the third of this seminar series. And this time, I am very, very pleased to welcome Lieutenant Colonels Satoko Torihata and Lieutenant Colonel Jasmine Cho, Army Reserve, retired U.S. Army also. They are going to share with us their perspective on their own experience of being involved in the rescue, recovery, and reconstruction effort, and what are the some of the unique challenges as the female officer deeply involved in this kind of a frontline operation. So, couple of housekeeping announcements. This seminar is, as usual, simultaneously translated. So if you can go to the your lower bottom of the column, and you will see the globe mark that calls interpretation. If you click that, you can choose between English and Japanese, English or Japanese, or you can turn it off and you can listen to these in their original speaking language. I will first start this session by asking both panelists two opening questions, and following that, I will go immediately into Q&A with those of you who are joining us this morning. To ask a question, if you see there is a Q&A column, if you can click that and type in your question, and then if you can make it clear that which panelist this your question is for, or if it's for both of them, you can tell us that too. But please do use this Q&A box, not the chat box, because I will not be able to monitor both boxes, and I will only be paying attention to a question and answer box. So please mindful of do that. And also for those of you who are joining us in the audience, please do mute yourself while one of us is speaking, because they did tend to interfere with the background noise. So without further ado, again, very happy to have Lieutenant Colonel Cho and Lieutenant Colonel Torihata. Both of them had their own unique experience 10 years ago being involved in the Operation Tomodachi. So let me actually start by asking you, Lieutenant Colonel Torihata, if you can share with us what what was going through your mind in the first 48 to 72 hours of the onset of this operation? And I think I would ask the same question to Lieutenant Colonel Cho as well. So I guess let me start with you, Torihata-san, and then I'll ask Jasmine to follow. I think you're muted. I think you're muted still. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Now that is. So while Lieutenant Colonel is working to unmute, oh, there you go. There she goes. I
聞こえ
think
て
she's
ますか
fine.
ね。はい。OK。はい。皆さん、おはようございます。日本の方は、こんばんはですね。
I think she may be having Torihata-san may be having a mute yourself issue. So while we get resolved on that one, why don't I turn to Jasmine, and then hopefully by the time she's done, hopefully by the time the Jasmine's remarks is done, Torihata-san's technical problem is resolved. So I will first just turn it over to you, Jasmine.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'd say in my case, I have to say within a week of the earthquake, because it took about that much time to get notified, get mobilized, and then finally to deploy to Camp Sendai to support Operation Tomodachi. I guess the first 48, 72 hours of that, I remember flying via Blackhawk from Camp Zama to Yamagata and then finally to Camp Sendai. There really wasn't a lot of information. I think at that point we were just get as much support as we can to the location as quickly as possible. That was sort of the end state. We were all issued 2 radiation sensors. Not very sure what to do with it, except they said make sure to have both of them on your uniform. And I guess one measured your current radiation level, and then the other measured your cumulative. We had our ruck, we had our gear, and we were told once you get to Camp Sendai, you'll have follow-on instructions. I think probably the days between that time when after the earthquake happened and then the minute I stepped onto the Black Hawk, there was this sense of surrealness. I was in Tokyo at the time, and Tokyo streets are never empty, but they were deserted. There were no activity. What used to be bustling with people, the stores were empty. There were constant aftershocks. I think for the most part, we were just uncertain of what was to happen next. But it's strange. The minute I was in uniform, going out to support Operation Tomodachi, I had a sense of purpose, and I was confident at that point that we could do something to help. Should I talk about challenges, or I don't know? Oh, yeah. So some of the challenges, probably the one that is not surprising under the circumstances, was figuring out how and who to support. There were a lot of people there at Camp Sendai, just a flurry of activity. There are all services, all nationalities, it seems like, branches. Everybody was setting up their temporary command posts, new arrivals every minute. They were getting updates from our command posts as well as the media on just the immense scope of the destruction. And the command and control lines were not clear. We knew who sent us, but once we got there, it's like, well, who do we fall under? And in my particular case, I just overheard somebody saying, hey, the Marine unit at Sendai Airport needs somebody to help interpret. I said, I'll go. Send me. I mean, I don't know what other qualifications I have besides I speak Japanese, and so I went, and ever since then, pretty much I supported operations there, and eventually that's actually where they stood up one of the bilateral coordination centers, and so it turned out it was a good place to be. Um, Probably the harder challenge, again, experienced by everybody, was just there was so much destruction, but there was such a sense of urgency. Everybody was like, "We're running out of time. There's people out there who needs help." Uh, but the elements were against us. Obviously, you had the cold, you had the lack of water, you had um, the limited daylight. It was just kind of like we're always running against the clock, trying to do as much as we can before it became dark. And I think the hardest part was watching the self-defense force soldiers who were on just nonstop patrol. They were going out every day, all times of the day, looking for survivors, and oftentimes um, finding them too late. And it was hard to see that, but they still went out there every day without fail. And they really were sort of the true heroes, I think. So, and that's all I have.
Sorry, I have to do that too. Thank you for sharing that experience. You're in a really unique situation where even the bilateral coordination action team in Sendai was stood up. So that is a pre BCAT day perspective is really intriguing and insightful. So let me now turn to Torihata-san. Hopefully the technical difficulties resolved. So we'll see. Maybe there's something with the volume of your computer, Torihata-san, like a speaker volume.
今、
Yes.
OK、
はい。
聞こえますか？
Yes. Yes.
すいません。皆さんすいません、遅くなりましたが、おはようございます。改めて紹介させていただきます。陸上自衛隊の鳥畑と申します。本日はよろしくお願いします。当時につきましては、私は部隊の方で活動に従事しておりまして、これまでウェビナーに参加された方々とはちょっと視点が変わって、現場レベルでのお話、そして女性隊員としての視点も交えてお話できればと思います。私は当時、宮城県仙台市に所在する部隊に所属しておりまして、3月の末には教育のため、静岡の富士駐屯地に行くことが決まっておりました。当時は、部隊での勤務、そして、教育に備えた自らの勉強、あとは2歳になる息子の世話に手一杯の状況で日々過ごしておりました。まず一つ目の質問で、発災後から72時間ぐらいまでの状況ですが、まさに震度7というその地震、未曾有の地震でありまして、我々の勤務場所、プレハブ隊舎だったんですが、そちらもものすごく大変な状況になっておりました。足の踏み場もないような状況で、地震直後はまず自分たちの体制を取ること自体がとても困難な状況でした。その当時の地震で覚えているのが、本当に何かに捕まらなければ立っていられない状況で、とても長い時間揺れが続く状態で、私はとっさに保育園に預けている息子の顔が思い浮かび、とても不安な気持ちになりました。津波が発生しまし、皆さんご存知の通り、津波が発生しまして、部隊がすぐに動ける状態ではなく、また津波の被害の情報がラジオや確かテレビなどで細部まで覚えておりませんが流れ続けており、被害の全貌がつかめず混乱していたと思います。また 携帯電話が非常につながりにくく、発災日に部隊に不在にしていた隊員やその隊員のご家族の安否確認も普段のいつものように携帯がつながる状況とは全く異なる状況でありまして、スムーズにできずに、本当バタバタと3月11日、12日、そして13日と過ぎていったような気がします。一番大変だったことといいますのは、やはり発災当初といいますのは、情報がとてもない状況、かつ様々な情報が錯綜しておりまして、正確な情報を得ることが一番大変だったと記憶しております。普段は車で行けるところが浸水のため行けない。携帯電話がつながらない。一方で、救助を要請する声が様々なところから出ておりまして、私たちがどこに行かなければならないのか、これを判断するに至るまでの正確な情報がなかったと記憶しております。派遣活動に当時従事していた際に考えていたことは2つあります。1つ目は、大変多くの方が被災し、亡くなっていらっしゃる状況、これを人事と思えず、私自身、自分自身にできることは何かを常に考えて活動に従事しておりました。2つ目は、一隊員として活動に従事する一方で、同じく地震の被害に遭った家族、私も当時父親が別の岩手県に住んでおりまして、沿岸部近くで勤務しており、連絡が取れず、非常に不安な思いがありました。また、小さな息子のことがとても気がかりでありました。女性隊員としてどういうふうに感じたかということについてもお話しさせていただきます。大変だった当時の思い出といたしましては、やはり子供を抱えての活動に従事すること、これがすごく難しく大変だったなというふうに感じております。当時、息子はまだ2歳で、震災の恐ろしさを言葉にできなくても、すごく非常にもう見た目からして怯えて、もう表情、仕草、すべてがすごく怯えている状況で、私がそばにいなければとても泣き続ける状態でした。私の場合は偶然運よく息子を発災から確か2日後ぐらいに家族に預けることができ、息子の心配することなく限られた期間ですが活動に従事することができたというふうに今感じております。以上です。
Thank you, Torihata-san. I think what you just touched upon about how you have the mission to complete, but then you also have your young son to worry about. You had your young son to worry about. You also had a father who were working in that impacted area who you couldn't communicate. I think this is one unique challenge that I think you all had. For those of you who were involved in this operation, were all shared. And I think you already touched upon the unique challenge that you had as the female officer who had to be involved in operation. But I think let me hark back at you, Jasmine, on this one. What are some of the unique challenges that you might have had as a female officer, maybe with a family? What were some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think nothing. It pales in comparison to what Toriata-san had said. At the time, I was single, no dependents. I was in Japan on assignment on my own, and I was also based out of Tokyo, and I had flown into Sendai. Um, I can't even imagine the pressure, the emotional strain of it happening to where you live with family, with a child, and relatives who are suffering. But then you're also called to duty, and I think that the struggle of overcoming, where does your priority lie, and how do you focus on the mission? Um, I, I I can't even imagine how challenging that must have been. But I think from my perspective, I don't think being a woman affected anything at that time in my life. To me, I was a soldier. There were soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines in uniform who were men and women who had all come to help. And I was confident because of my training. At the time, I was one of two U.S. Army Foreign Area officers attending the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force Command and Staff College. I was the class number 56, very proud of that. I think that's one of the things whenever I meet anybody else from CGS class, I always remark, oh, I was 56. I'm like, oh, I was, and they're like, ah, senpai kohai, just immediately determine where you are. um, but prior to that, I had served in the Indo-Pacific region for 5 years, Army for 11. Uh, all we did was train, whether it was real world or a virtual scenario. And I was comfortable sort of in that training environment, that operation environment. So I think it was thankfully because of the military and the training in crisis response that I knew that I could trust that it'll guide me through the scenario. And so I never really felt myself being different because of my gender, I guess. Um, and then I guess probably what was more uh, touched me more, I guess, was in a personal level was that I wasn't new to Japan. This wasn't my first time in Japan. Uh, for me, I had spent some of my younger years in Japan. I was an army brat. For those who don't know what army brat is, that means that you are a child of somebody who was also in the military. So you're a little brat that follows them around. In my case, my mother was also in the U.S. Army. She was also a foreign area officer, and I had graduated high school from Camp Zama, Japan. And as a single mom, she always included me in all of her travels in Japan, as well as her social gatherings, her golf with her self-defense force counterparts, which was every weekend. And she called me her kabangmochi, which translates to, I guess, like a lackey who carries bags. So she kind of started my FEO training earlier in life. I also attended Japanese high school as an exchange student for a year. I lived in a Japanese dorm. I wore the school uniform, the akogare na seirafuku, which if you read Japanese anime, that's like always there. And so Japan was truly a second home. I loved the culture, I loved its people, and I felt very compelled that I could offer support in a kind of a personal way, and it meant a lot for me to help. So I think that's probably what was going through my mind more. One of the unique opportunities for Operation Tomodachi, though, was that it did give me a chance to meet with the Japanese women self-defense force soldiers, such as Toriata-san. There were so few at the time that I think whenever I saw them, it was just an amazement. I was like, "Oh, you exist!" And we were, of course, during Operation Tomodachi, we were put in the same quarters, and so being able to work and meet them, it was very special. I think I saw in them a kind of an inner strength. Everybody was very positive, despite people who were at Sendai were most likely like Torihata-san. They were from Sendai. They probably had family in Sendai, and yet they came to work. They were determined. They worked hard. Um, I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's not just the self-defense force, but I think this was evident everywhere. My U.S. military counterparts, colleagues, we were always tremendously moved and in awe of um, the strength, courage, and care that the people of Sendai had, how they united and responded and came together. And I don't know. I mean, perhaps being a woman in uniform, because it's not common, perhaps we may have projected a softer image of the military. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it's possible, but I knew that handing out supplies, whether it was food, water, toiletries, toys to children, it didn't matter whether you were a woman or a man. I think everybody was just happy that you were there to help. So.
Thank you, Jasmine, for your thoughts. Let me go straight into the question and answers given that. And then I think I would start with the question to you, Jasmine. This is from Vice Admiral Van Biskirk, who was a 7th Fleet at that time. So since you were in the unique position of being in Sendai before the BCAT, been is being in the process of being established, he was wondering if you can elaborate on the areas of operation that your translation duties encompass, and how you found the coordination, coordination and cooperation between the JGSDF, I think in this case, and the U.S. commands. I think in this case, because it's in Sendai, it would have been a Marine. So.
Right. No, that's true. That's a great question. So when I started working at Sendai Airport, there were basically predominantly 4, I guess, groups. You had the special operations group that came from Hawaii, that their sole focus was getting the airfield back up so that flights could come in, and it was critical because we needed supplies, and that was the main location where they can come in. So we also had the Combined Arms Training Center Marines from Camp Fuji, who was there. They were sort of the muscle, I guess you could say. I mean, there was just so much debris, so much to clear up. I mean, cars were piled on top of each other, and they were really there just every morning, every night, just clearing things. Wherever the focus was for the day, they were at it. We also had the Japanese ground self-defense force who were patrolling the area, but specifically we had the Colonel Kasamatsu, who was at the time he was our one of our kyokans, one of our instructors at CGSC, and he was brought in to assist with the efforts. His English was beautiful as well, and so I think having him there was critical. And then we had the Japanese air traffic control personnel who were initially, they were just kind of there to, I guess, assist the special operations group because they had essentially taken over the air traffic control responsibilities until the airport was operational enough for civilian aircraft to come in. I'd say the types of translation or interpretation that I assisted, it sort of varied. There was the daily daily morning huddle, I guess you could say, with these elements, where we talked about, all right, what is the mission for the next 24 hours? Where is the focus? Who needs support? Who needs what kinds of support? And usually we deferred to our Japanese Self-Defense Force representative, Colonel Kasamatsu, as well as the Japanese air traffic control. And we said, what do you need and how can we support? And we let them drive the train. And so we would help with the interpretation during that meeting, but then for the rest of the day, I would just kind of place myself wherever I thought there was a need. And usually our Marines, they're eager and they want to go out and do things. And so whether it was going out to deliver critical supplies, I would join them on their convoys. So that I can link up with either whether it's Japanese civilian organizations or shelters, or with other Japanese Self-Defense Force counterparts. I would work with them to help interpret during those situations. But it was, I think, for the most part, an opportunity for a lot of cultural sharing to happen as well. And so it was interesting whenever it was lunchtime, and we would the U.S. military would bring out our MREs, our meals ready to eat in our big plastic container, and then our Japanese counterparts would have their kanzume. They had their equivalent, but they were the military ones that had little cans, and we're just fascinated by that. And so we would be doing I guess what soldiers do no matter where you are. It's like, well, would you like to try this? And I'll try that. And so even during sort of these trying times, there was moments of levity and just sort of cultural exchange that happened. And so yes, I would participate in that as well. But I'd say there was definitely strong cooperation, and the underlying I guess mission was, how can we help the Japanese, whether it was civilian, whether it was military, and provide the best support that we can.
Thank you for that perspective. Sharing the MRE versus Self-Defense Forces lunch kit is a kind of the story that you would not hear unless you were actually in it. So
theirs was far superior to our MRE, I think.
So I think Ground Self-Defense Forces, for those of you who does those MREs for Self-Defense Force, I think they should gain their confidence.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you for that. Next question comes from Shin Hira. Mr. Hira, this is for Torihata-san. He would like you to elaborate on, as an officer, how did you take care of the soldiers in your group who were also, just like as you were, who were worried about their families, and while they were still have to conduct their duties? If you can share how you share those experiences, maybe you took care of your soldiers mentally. If you can share that, that will be great.
当時、私の部隊には同じような女性幹部は確かにあまりいなかったような、ただ陸曹の方で、同じく子どもを抱えている隊員の方は多数おりました。やはりそういった同じような思いを共有している人たちは悩みも同じでして、やはり子どもを抱えながらいかにしてその活動に従事するかで、特にこの今回のその東日本大震災の時には小さな子どもを抱えている人たちは日中は保育園に子どもを預けることができておりましたが、やはり夜になるとその子どもを駐屯地の中に連れて帰ってきて夜はもちろんすごく時期も冷えておりましたし、ストーブもつけた状態でありましたので、交代でずっと起きながら子どもが寝ているところ安全にしっかりと夜寝れるように交代で番をしておりました。日中はしっかりと男性女性関係なく我々に与えられた任務を遂行するために活動する。そして夜は子どもの面倒を見るというところで、なかなかその2つを、ずっと長期間やり続けることにはやはり結構ストレスを感じていたと思います。私がその幹部の女性自衛官として彼女たちに何か具体的に指示をしたりケアをできたかというと、ちょっとそこまでは当時まだできていなかったと思いますが、私なりに彼女たちの話を聞いてあげる、そして思いを共有する、それが私なりにやっていたことかなと今となっては感じております。以上です。
Thank you. That is really a unique challenge that you have a duty to complete or conduct, but then you still have to take care of your child or children. And then I think just having an officer going through the same experience, I'm sure was a big encouragement for the soldiers female soldiers who were also going through that. So thank you for that. Next question, I think this is for Jasmine as well. It's from Mr. Tainaka. He's wondering if while you were, Jasmine, involved in this, did you have any communication with the sailors of Ronald Reagan? off of Fukushima?
I was, like I said, I was at the Sendai airport the entire time, and so we didn't really have any communications with the Navy, or I guess specifically the USS Ronald Reagan. But it is very possible that they were part of the operation specifically with regards to medical assistance. I know that we had brought in just pretty much any and every available asset in Japan, near Japan, to support Operation Tomodachi. I mean, I dare to say I think there were at least 24 naval ships involved in this overall operation. So I would very much assume that they were part of the operation in a great way, but not specifically at Sendai Airport.
Thank you. I think next question is for you both. So I would start probably from Torihata-san, then ask Yasmin to follow. This is from Miss Omoto. If another disaster, God forbid, we really hope that won't happen, but if another disaster strikes Japan and something similar to Operation Tomodachi becomes necessary, what are some of the areas where you think female service members can be employed effectively? And now I think, Jasmine, now that you're also a mom, you may have a different perspective on it while you reflect it from that perspective. So I'll start from you, Torihata-san, and then ask Jasmine.
はい。女性隊員の有効活用というか、やはり先ほどもちょっと申しました通り、任務がある際には女性、男性関係なく、その与えられた任務、これを遂行することが大事だと考えております。ただ、東日本の時もそうだったんですけれども、やはりその津波の、被害があったような地域では、家屋とか、すごくこう、重いものをこう取り除いたりとか運んだりとかっていうのがありますので、そういった体力的に男性の方がやはりこう、なんですかね、重いものを持ち上げたりとか、体格的な差があったりもするので、そういったところは男性が、合っているのかな。ただ女性もその、細々とした作業とかもできるので、そこは男性、女性関係ないかなと思います。あとは、私もそうだったんですけれども、当時、仙台市内でもかなりの数の避難所が開設をされておりまして、私もその自分の受け持ち地域の避難所を回りました。男性隊員と一緒に回ったんですけれども、やはりその女性っていうのは何ですかね、皆さんにこう、与える安心感というのが多分あるかと思うんですよね。そこですごくこう、そこに避難されている方々などからいろいろとお話を聞いたり、すごくお礼を、自衛隊さん来てくれてありがとうとかですね、そういう言葉をいろいろこう受けたので、別に女性なりの何ですかね、皆さんに対してこう何でも聞き入れるというか、受け入れるような雰囲気があるかもしれないので、そういった例えば避難所での活動とか給食とかですね、そういう時にこう少しのプラスの気遣いを持って女性隊員はできるのかなと私自身は当時思っておりました。そしてそれは今でも思っているところであります。以上です。
Thank you. Jasmine?
I would definitely agree with Toriata-san is that, well, first and foremost, let there not be another one. Let there not be another disaster like that. I think in our case, we, the U.S. military, want to be as much of a force multiplier to help the Japanese government, help the Japanese self-defense force, to help the Japanese people in the best way possible. So I wouldn't say there is a specific place that perhaps that a women soldiers or sailors or airmen can go, but I think kind of like how Ms. Toriata-san said is let them be everywhere visible, let them be part of every operation that they can, and show that kind of a face of that it's a diverse military, that it has both women and men, and it's a military that's approachable, that does different operations, and it I think would perhaps help dispel the myth that the military is all about fighting. No, it's not. It's about helping as well. It's mission dependent. So, if at all possible, at any time, deploy the women military to all locations so that they can be of service in whatever mission they may have. So.
Thank you. And then actually listening to your both of your answers, that actually inspired me to ask maybe more. This question is probably more from Torihata-san, but then Jasmine, please do feel free to chime in. So Torihata-san, so now that you are in the public affairs office, and you have a external face to interact with everybody, but then because of your just seeing the female officers and soldiers that are visibly involved in the rescue operation during this, do you think that might have perhaps that inspired the young women that this is something that they can do? This is meaningful work that they can be involved in the future. Do you think that may have that you might have be able to contribute to inspire some of those young women that you had an interaction with?
はい。やはり自衛隊という組織の中で男性、女性関係なく、特に私がいた部隊においては、結構20代から20代ぐらいの若い女性隊員も多数おりまして、活動に、第一線の捜索活動に従事しておりました。そういった、活動の一端を多くの方々、例え避難されて、なんですか、被災地の方であったり、ここの被災地以外の、遠く離れたところに住んでいらっしゃる、例えば小さい子供から小学生、中学生、高校生とかまで、自衛隊ってこういう時にでもやはり男性、女性関係なく活動するんだということを、少しでも知ってもらえる機会にはなったかと思います。それが、少しでもこう、なんですかね、インスピレーションといいますか、自衛隊という陸上、我々陸上自衛隊なんですけど、陸上自衛隊の活動について少しでも知ってもらえる機会にはなったかとは思っております。
Jasmine, any thought on this?
I completely agree. I think it's you have to be moved to join the military. There has to be. In my case, I had, like I said, my role model was my mom. She may be listening in, so I'm like Whiteo. But she joined the military when I was 7 months old, and I remember nothing obviously from then, but I remember her telling me stories of how hard it was leaving a 7-month-old with relatives so that she can go train to join the army. And I grew up seeing that. I watched her shine her boots and wear her uniform and go out on long exercises. She would deploy. I remember she went to Jordan and Egypt for training, and she would come back like 10 different shades of dark. But she smiled through it all, and she was so proud to serve the country, and to give something back to the country. And I think perhaps I could dare say that watching the women in uniform in Japan, the self-defense force, that most likely has inspired probably the same sentiment, and perhaps inspired those to join for the cause of serving in the military. So yes, I think that definitely had a positive impact in that regard.
So I gotta nudge in, and I didn't realize, Jasmine, until you share your story, until your mom was also a foreign area officer. And thank you again. Please thank your mom on behalf of all of us for her service. And of course, we always feel grateful for your service that you have given and continue to give out of the uniform now even. So thank you.
Thank you.
So please do make sure that your mom knows that we're all very, very inspired by your mom.
Thank you.
And the next question is again from the Vice Admiral Bembeskirk. I think this is related to all you've been sharing with us. But if both of you reflect on maybe Torihata-san, maybe I may be asking you to stretch your imagination a little bit, but on your personal experiences, both of your personal experiences during Operation Tomodachi, what do you think some of the lessons learned that should be carried forward? Obviously, Torihata-san's view and Jasmine's view will probably come in from a different angle. So I would start from Jasmine and then ask Torihata-san to follow.
Sure. I think there's probably tons of studies that were done after Operation Tomodachi on ways that we could have improved our operation, and it could, probably take up more than an hour just talking about that. I think from my end, and I think the military is already aware of this and doing this, is more training in scenarios that are not, I guess, like I said, we do a lot of sort of crisis preparedness, crisis response for almost developing country scenarios where it's third world. They don't have a lot of the things that you'd expect, but not so much, I think, first world. And so in this case, Japan, first world developed country. If a disaster like this happens to this scale, perhaps we could do more investment in training in that type of scenario. I guess in a way, this past year of COVID has been kind of that of, the virus doesn't discriminate whether you're first world or third world. And so adapting has been something that we've all been doing. But I think that kind of training and exposure and I think, like we talked about with Torihata-san, ensuring that all members, male or female, are given an opportunity to serve in every capacity, in every way, regardless of the mission. I think that only enhances and strengthens the unit, and I think that's something that we can continue to work towards.
Thank you, Jasmine. Torihata-san.
はい、私もジャスミンさんのようにやはり東日本大震災というのは未曾有の災害で想定外という言葉をよく使われておりました。やはりそういう想定外に備えるためにはやはり常日頃から備えて訓練をしていついかなる時でも対応できる体制を取ることが必要だと思います。と私は実際子供を預けながら活動に従事していたんですけれども、やはり東日本大震災を経験したことで、やはりその子どもを連れて登庁して、その子どもを駐屯地の中で預かる体制が、やはり東日本大震災を通じて、よりその体制というものが確立されたかと思います。ついこの前、2月の13日にも、東北地方の方で地震が発生し、東日本大震災の余震とも言われておりました。隊員は地震発生した際には速やかに活動に従事するよう出勤しており、子どもも東日本大震災の時のように連れて出勤をしておりました。やはりいつ災害が発生するかはわからないので、子どもを持つ親が心配なく活動に従事できる体制が今後も必要だと思います。
That is an important lessons learned, that how to take care of the family that are left behind, especially this is so true in our country too, in the US, that both parents are in service and sometimes they both have to deploy, and how to take care of the children and the parents. I think that continues to be the challenge in this country as well. So I think that is something definitely, especially in something like Operation Tomodachi, where you have to work and do your operation when you know that your families are affected. I think that'll be a huge, huge challenge moving forward.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So next question comes from Mr. So. This is for Torihata-san. I wonder if your unit had any challenges interfacing with the other, not just the U.S. military, but then maybe foreign residents that you would try to help, any kind of language barrier that presented challenges for you to, provide support. If you have any, either your personal experience or your soldier having, hearing your soldier having those communication problem, if you can share that, that will be great, because not everybody has the good fortune like having Jasmine right at their side. So
Taking away their bentos.
私の部隊は、友達作戦とか米軍の方と一緒に捜索をするという機会はありませんでしたが、私自身はですね、震災後、2015年あたりに、東北方面総監部、ヘッドクォーターのところの広報室で勤務しておりまして、その時に東日本大震災における友達作戦の米軍の活動などについても皆さんに広く周知する機会を得ておりました。そこではやはりジャスミンさんのようにうまく通じる方がいらっしゃらなかったんですけれども、しっかりと何ですかね、同じ思い、やはりこの東北の地域をなんとか復興したいという思いでもってなんとか米軍の方とコミュニケーションを取ってやり取りしていたというふうには聞いております。やはり言語というのはなかなか話せないとかなりますと障害になるんですけれども、同じ思いを抱いていれば最低限のコミュニケーションは取れるのかなというふうに私は当時感じておりました。
Anything to add on that, Jasmine?
Yeah. I guess I was, blessed. I don't know if is the right word to say, is kind of being there at the right time, that I could help. But I did encounter, many the Marines or just the people who flew in just to support this operation. It was their first time in Japan. They didn't know anything about Japan. They didn't know how to communicate, and oftentimes they're working side by side with the self-defense force, whether it's carrying boxes or delivering supplies in the same convoy. And there was a lot of just curiosity. They want to know more about Japan, the Japanese, but there's definitely that the language barrier was there. But there was always interest. And so I tried to, as best as I can, try to integrate myself whenever I saw pockets of both Japanese and US, that I would just kind of hang out. And sure enough, there would be some question that come out, and then I would say, "Oh, specialist so and so is wondering, why this and that." And then the Japanese like, "Oh, really? Okay." Well, then they would start talking, and but I think the one thing that united everybody was they wanted to help. And so I think the language barrier, like Toriata-san said, it's that mission transcended everything. And so I think that it brought everybody together, regardless of the language issue.
Thank you. I think this probably will have to be the an hour usually flew by, and this one is no exception. We only have 5 more minutes to go. So last question is, both of you are in serving in the military when the both males and female officers and soldiers are fully integrated. If you can just share, but then still, I think female officers are still a little bit fewer than your male colleagues. So I wonder if both of you can share your personal experience of what it's like to be amongst in a gender-wise fully integrated military. And specifically for Torihata-san, if you can also add your own thought on whether the fact that visibility of the female self-defense force officers and soldiers really could really, I think, inspired a lot of people. Do you think this could also have triggered the revision within self-defense force to be more, to provide more, I guess, equitable opportunities and expand roles that the female officer can play in your line of work? So I think I would start with Jasmine first and then ask Torihata-san to finish.
Again, my perspective is very skewed, I guess. I was fortunate enough that I was born into a family where my mother was in the military. It was my normal. There was no thought of why can't a woman be in the military? No, that's what my mom does. I remember elementary school, she was a company commander, and she was driving around with her Jeep and a walkie-talkie. And back then in the 80s, the walkie-talkie was like the size of a briefcase. So I think that was sort of the image that I had of the military. When I joined the military, I think I was more shocked that there weren't as many females in the military. But the important thing, I think, is that you're a soldier first, you're a sailor first, airman, marine first, and that is what the military does well in training. Is that you wear a uniform? It's called a uniform because it's uniform. Everybody wears the same thing, trains the same way, same expectation. And it's up to you to rise up to meet that standard. And if you're determined, if you work hard, you do. And then that's how you gain the respect of your fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, based on your work and your dedication. And I think continues to be. I still serve in the uniform as a reservist, and it's almost liberating in a way, because I don't think of my gender or the fact that I'm a woman. When I'm in uniform, I'm a soldier, and that's I can focus on the mission. And I think the military has provided both myself and my mother great opportunities to excel, and I think it'll continue to do so. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's lots of work that needs to be done, and we're heading towards that direction, I think. And but at a personal level, it's been a huge opportunity for me to develop as a leader, and I hope other women, young women, decide to take on this kind of career in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Torihata-san, last word to you.
はい、女性隊員がやはり全体としても少ないんですけれども、これは何ですかね、日本全体としてもだんだんその女性の進出がさまざまな分野でどんどん増えていく中で、防衛省自衛隊、さらには陸上自衛隊の中でもおのずとその女性の幹部の人数とかもだんだんそれは増えていくと思います。私自身職種というものがですね、野戦特化といってフィールドアーティラリーで大砲を撃つ部隊なんですけれども、私が初めて部隊に配属されたときはそこに初めて女性幹部として入る人で初めての人間でありまして、やはり受け入れる方もですね、かなり男性隊ももしかしたらいろいろな戸惑いがあったかとは思います。そこはやはり最初のハードルとして今までいなかった女性が入ってくるというときには、受け入れる方も若干そのアレルギーというかですね、何かしらやっぱ感じるところがあったかと思うんですけれども、そこはやはり先ほどジャスミンさんが言ったように、やはり我々は私たちは一隊員であり、男性女性の区別はそこにはないというふうに感じておりまして、人として接していく上でしっかりと受け入れてくれる人たちにも私のその人となりというのが理解してもらって、同じ中隊の仲間として活動する一緒になって活動することができました。 今後は女性隊員っていうのはどんどん増えていきますし、そこはやはり皆さん今後入ってくる人たちについても、ちょっと最初はなんですかね、その一歩足を踏み入れることに対して少しおじけづいていくことがあるかもしれないんですけども、勇気を持って踏み込めば組織というものがしっかりと受け入れてくれるというふうに考えております。私自身も陸上自衛官として今後もですね誇りを持って、そして息子にも誇りを持ってもらえるような母親としてもこれからもちょっと頑張っていきたいなというふうに考えております。以上です。
Thank you both. Thank you both. First of all, for service to your own respective country, and also, this is a really good way for me personally to start my day with hearing other fellow working mom, for especially who someone like both of you who have this call of duty, and sometimes you really have to balance those two huge responsibilities. So this is a great inspiration for me personally, and then I hope it inspired the many of those who joined us this morning to this webinar. So again, thank you both. Thank you again for your services to both of your to your respective country, and we are delighted to have been able to host you for today's discussion. And this concludes our webinar. So thank you again. Good evening, Torihata-san. I know we asked you to stay up late, but thank you very much. And Jasmine, you have hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are chiming into the webinar, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you at our next seminar. Thank you very much.
Take care.